host for the hour today is Christina Liu, and I want to thank Christina Liu for all of her hard work. I also want to thank my fellow organizers for the Boston Poetry Marathon online for 2020, Xtina Strong, Bridget, Eileen, and of course, Christina Liu. Thank you, everyone. And I want to thank our volunteers for the weekend, Tom Daly, Tim Gager, Gilmore Tamney, Joe Elliott, Douglas Rothschild, and I especially want to thank Chad, who is struggling to get in here as we speak, who is helping as a special assistant to Carol Weston. So this is going to be a wonderful hour. I know that not everyone is here right now, but we'll kind of introduce people in late and we'll get them in there as best we can. We are streaming live to our Facebook page at Boston Poetry Marathon, our Twitter via Periscope at Boss Poetry Mara, and live on our YouTube channel. For links to these broadcasts, please go to bostonpoetrymarathon.wordpress.com/watch. Okay, I also want to remind everyone that this year's Boston Poetry Marathon is also a fundraiser for two local organizations that work for racial justice in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. Donations will go to Sister Fire Rhode Island and the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts. Now, admission to the Boston Poetry Marathon is of course free, but $10 donation to the fundraiser is recommended and greatly appreciated. I want to say that the response to this has been overwhelming, and I'm just teary-eyed every time I look at it. I want to thank everyone for their donations. It's very generous, and it's going to be all of you who've donated. Thank you very much. Again, if you, for more information about the fundraiser, go to bostonpoetrymarathon.wordpress.com/donate for more information. Let's see, though we can't be together in person for these readings and the breaks between, we really miss that. We encourage all of our participants and viewers to share selfies, screenshots, old photos, memories, comments on our social media. Please use hashtag Boston Poetry Marathon. Tag us at Boston Poetry Marathon on Instagram and Facebook, and at Boss Poetry Mara on Twitter. And thank you in advance for that. So a reminder to our readers that you have 8 minutes each, and the 8 minutes start as soon as you begin speaking. I am going to get my little timer out. Any intros to poems or anything like that is part of the 8-minute talk. I'll be timing the readings. Just make sure that you open your chat window right now, because when you have 1 minute left, I'll type 1 minute into the chat. And when you have 30 seconds left, I will type in 30 seconds. At 5 minutes, excuse me, not 5 minutes, 8 minutes, I'll have to interrupt you and introduce the next reader. If you finish before your 8 minutes, I'll thank you and introduce the next reader. If your connection is bad during your reading, and it looks like everyone has a pretty good connection, I'll interrupt you to let you know and help you troubleshoot that. Let's see, I'm going to introduce the readers for the hour right now. Reader, when I say your name, please give a short greeting so that we can have a sound check. Let me go to the schedule. Ruth Lepson, are you here?
I am.
Yay!
Perfect.
All right, you
Great.
got in. I'm so
Yeah.
glad. Daniel Bouchard.
Hello.
Hello. Jim Burley. Is Jim here yet?
Jim is not here yet.
Okay. I hope that he'll make it in. Amanda Cook.
I'm here.
All right. James Cook. James Cook, are you here? Can you hear me?
Ready to go.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
And Carol Weston, who is being helped by Chad Parenteau. Have they made it into the room yet? I see Chad. I see. Chad, can you hear me?
To grid view.
Okay. Chad, you can hear me?
Yes, Carol's on her way.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, Carol's on her way. Terrific. I'm so glad. Okay, so everyone, please mute yourself except for Ruth Lepson, who is our first reader. Our first reader of the hour is Ruth.
Well, here we are.
Here we are.
Okay, I'm not well timed. So what I'd like to do is to read just part of a prose poem I'm working on right now, because that's the thing that's close to my heart. So would you mind posting after I've read for 4 minutes on chat, and then I'll switch to remembrances, okay? Is that
Yep.
okay?
Yep, absolutely. Sorry, I was on mute.
The yellow tulip. When Garrett died, the image of a yellow tulip popped up in my mind, and childish as it seemed, I couldn't shake it. Now I think I understand it's the golden flower, symbol of the philosopher's stone, temple of the wise, elixir of life. His body was gone, but his spirit was revived for all of us. The Jains of Rajasthan, India, devote themselves to feeding flocks of demoiselle cranes who migrate at 23,000 feet over the Himalayas. The first verse of the Ramayana curses the hunter who killed the male of the pair. Because all verse was considered received until then, this passage is considered the oldest composed poetry in the world. People who have ventured far from home or undertaken difficult journeys are often compared to these delicate cranes. Within decades, a quarter of the Earth's population will be forced to migrate. Homer, not really one person, traveled to India. So did Plato and Democritus, which may be where they learned about atoms, those irreducible bits of matter, their speculation, really a quest for immortality, a way to reconstitute the dead body. Democritus claimed that bodily atoms are triangles with prongs, and round fire atoms, the soul. The other aspect of life is the void through which the atoms travel. Is it lonely to remain anonymous, or a relief, like becoming ordinary? Two Zen masters were checking out in parallel lines at the supermarket, nodding to each other they knew. What might it mean to know in silence? A certain number of those who film secretly inside factory farms commit suicide, especially after their first exposure. The cruelty is so extreme. Something got hotter and infinitely more dense until its interior turned to lead, then exploded, creating everything. We, the constellations, the triumphant stars, the half moon. Tennyson's Ulysses says wistfully, I am not what I once was. Since Inanna, goddess of heaven and earth, tricked her sister into letting her escape from the underworld, the days go on. Was Inanna the chief god of Mesopotamia? For the foreseeable future, that will remain unknown since there aren't enough people alive to translate the rest of the hieroglyphic tablets. A volcano will erupt when Trump refuses to leave office. Violence in the streets. Some talk about that while others are convinced things will return to normal. Myself, I think we're at the threshold of a new world. Either worse, is that possible, or better, the best of all worlds? The Greeks were well aware that they were newcomers to their region of the world. Persia, Mesopotamia, and Egypt had existed for centuries. In Egypt, very little changed through time, as Isis protected the meaning of things, whereas in Greece, new words were constantly being invented, and argument was everything. Longfellow's is the first poem I memorized. The world is so full of a number of things, I'm sure we should all be as happy as kings. But are kings happy? And who's this speaker so sure of himself? Which things is the world so full of anyway? Garbage heaps or lollipops? We still manufacture them. And love? After all, if everything is made of the same irreducible element, our outsides and the insides are the same. Where in the world is William Blake? Among the angels? I'm more inclined to believe in them lately than any gods. Voltaire, who added bits of chocolate, a luxury, to his coffee, he was a coffee fanatic, wrote that hope was his favorite characteristic in human beings. So he wasn't kidding when he said the best of all possible worlds, in a way. But tend your garden, we have not done. On the BBC in Yemen, a young woman pleads with the doctor, please don't tell us about the virus. We have enough horror already. Putting people in solitary confinement has to do with the destruction of the earth. When a Tibetan master knows he's going to die, he retires to his mountain hut. A few weeks later, the others come. This has happened thousands of times, that followers enter the hut only to find no skeleton there, just hair and nails, and floating around the room, rainbows. The alchemical process won't work when attempted at the wrong time. As the Hindu expression goes, things go where they are wanted. What harm is there in that? That doesn't mean that everything happens for a reason, which is a cruel way of thinking. He insists that aliens have lived on Earth for thousands of years. When I say that's ridiculous, he says, I don't have an open mind. Anything can happen. No, it can't, I say. Do you think that lamp can turn into a peacock? Maybe, he says. How are you sure that it can't? Cause and effect is a Western concept. There is no such thing. It's like synchronicity, claims Jungian Marie-Louise von France. It happens, but that doesn't mean we know anything about it or anything about alchemy. The unconscious rules alchemy. The individual's dreams remain powerful. It's the collective dreams which religions promote. In this week's New York Review of Books, Bill McKibben discusses Mark Linus as a final warning, 6 degrees of climate emergency. Have a look at the review of 4 books on animal language, one making a case for interspecies democracy. This is all there is. Why read another book on the last 100 days of Hitler? And to end with a quote from Christian Bach, a tulip dipped in liquid nitrogen undergoes instantaneous cryonics, whereupon the flower can be smashed to bits as easily as a wine glass. A word, when read aloud, is such a crystal being, shattered by a sequence of high frequency vibrations.
Ruth, thank you for that reading. That is beautiful. And I especially love that quote. Next up is Daniel Bouchard. Ruth, if you could mute yourself, and Daniel, unmute yourself.
I don't have 2 minutes left to say something about that.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Let me look at you said you were finishing. You have time left. I'm sorry. I thought you were wrapping up.
All right,
My apologies.
Okay, I'll cut out most of it because I only have 2 minutes left. I would just like to say, Sean Cole's laugh punctuates every marathon. If you haven't heard it, pay attention tonight. Also, I came to love the Sunday readings when Garrett would come down and other people like the Cooks and Jim Dunn from the North Shore, and sometimes the Cooks' kids would read, and it was like a kind of synagogue service. And Carol Weston, with her endless imagination, always astonished when people applauded her. Okay, I'll leave out everything else and I'll just say one more thing. So once we were holding the marathon at the Art Institute of Boston, and Jim Burley was giving me a ride to the reading. And we stopped at a light, and a bunch of readers pulled up next to us, and they said, "Are you going to the reading?" And Jim said, "Nope, Ruth and I are gonna go fuck." That's it.
Thank you, Ruth. I'm sorry I cut you short. I thought you had wrapped up before. My apologies for that.
That's quite all right.
Oh God, thank you. Thank you very much. So next up is Daniel Bouchard. So Ruth, you mute yourself. Daniel, unmute yourself, and let's hear it for Daniel.
Hi, thanks. I have 3 poems. I'll just read straight through. This is called Brewer Fountain. As the blossoms go, so goes the season in books, swept up from the sidewalks, save those pollinated by a reader, be they book moth or bee, who add loose paper to preserve between pages, not unlike petals that mark a honeyed passage, that flavor turned in the mind lingers longest. Now in the gutter colors bleed, made to run by the chemical reaction of reading, a flood like to overwhelm the senses. The propensity of texts pool for just a while, like strands of protein are images consumed, like a word sequence absorbed by fertile ground. Fill the libraries and shelves in the imperative mode. Avoid classrooms. Beware the blackboard bosses, the bureaucrats of intellect who also must make a living. Log off the pedagogic trappings of fail pass. The great oak tables of reading rooms promote a self-hushing seriousness, an air that only a particular bug can spring into and bore into a paper block. Like a Japanese screw punch, a little pressure, a little desire, some time turning leaves. You can always leave, go a distance for coffee, talk and return. Libraries vanish in smokeless indifference. Didn't Bradbury's book teach even that? The hour of fire breaking and the trees planted to counter a warming climate, made kindling in the meadows as summer sucked the juice right out of them. Different poem. The agent who brokered America's most expensive art sale is the dad of one of the guys shielding America's most shady president from mundane congressional oversight. The objet d'art is a yard-long silver bunny balloon whose surface mirrors self-satisfied smiles of hedge fund billionaires. That the balloon is not a plucked chicken speaks to the basic dishonesty of millionaire artists, mirrors their dull wit and predictability, interested only in self-enrichment and aggrandizing. For all American cities need prominent statues of chickens adorned with sugar and corn as homage to the American food chain and commemoration to the bold measures the administration took in combating the global pandemic by keeping nuggets in every pot. The position of the crackpot in America is long and undistinguished. In the early 21st century, one was made president, and the nation hummed along miserably, but kind of semi-stable, as long as corporate profits were steady. When meat workers die between shifts at the factory, an evaluation of profits is called for. And when healthcare workers die in great numbers, an evaluation of profits is called for. On the stone base of each plucked chicken statue, let the names of every corporate executive, shareholder, and lobbyist be carved as honor to the unnamed workers who died for their economy, ensuring the continued supply of meat and poultry as aids to the Oval Office crackpot pendant, where the workers are represented as product. And the last poem is called The Deaths of John Bartram. The day before the war began is remembered in context of the war, the chores and breaking down the one printing press to carry it away, the resources consolidated and blankets distributed, and livestock herded away from the invasion. The day before the riot began is remembered in context of riots. Always, authorities say, rioters are from elsewhere, like parents who deny the actions of a child that reflect poorly on them. Blindness or refusal to see sets the stage. That the place would be torn up, the work of a life in ruins is feared. I can't see the garden, can't see the river through the foliage. I can't see the gray stone house or the gray smoke in the distance. A non-combatant commercial botanist lays dead on the path. The past is hard to see for the stinging smoke of its blazes. I can't see the past, and the paths are easily overgrown. The smoke of a century-old riot is detected still in race relations. No statue for this one, not even for vines to climb, but a kind of unpacked stature in crated seed boxes to send forth living specimens and 1,000 seeds from which citations of the past are perennial. That is my 3 poems. Thank you.
Excuse me, I was muted. Sorry about that, everyone. Thank you, Daniel Bouchard. Please mute yourself. And next up, I just want to quickly ask Xtina, would you be able to go next since Jim Burley is not here, or would you like to wait? I can't hear you.
I could go later on today, but I don't have anything with me right this second.
Oh, okay. Let's connect about when would be a good time for you. I would say talk to Bridget about that and we'll figure that out. Beautiful. Okay, great. I'm going to mute you. And next up is Amanda Cook.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Amanda.
¿Me escuchas? Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Really happy to be here tonight, and thank you so much to all the organizers. I took my directive to talk about Memories of the Poetry Marathon very seriously, so I'm going to start by bringing Garrett in, which was often our role to bring Garrett into the city. So I'm going to start reading the poem that he and I shared most frequently. This is Annisquam Nights. I tell you it was real. Bayberry bushes on the hill, the house, yellow moon and simple love. But oh, fox laughter from the woods, the white fox running through the pines. Love that poem, and had a long relationship with Garrett over that poem and our different Annisquam nights that we discussed, having been of different eras in Annisquam at night. When I think about the Boston Marathon, Poetry Marathon, I think about a few things in particular. The first thing I think of is friendship, and all the friendships that were kept going through the annual meeting together. Like Ruth, I thought about Sean Cole's laugh. And that's one thing that I'm missing particularly during this marathon, and I hope to hear it. So I'm going to read another poem of Garrett's that Sean loves and that would make Sean laugh. And if he is somewhere and could somehow laugh for me right now, I would appreciate it. This is Egg Breakfast. Mornings, I eat my eggs ignorant of my eggs, their shifting auras and devices, hints and prohibitions. They are only chicken eggs, of course, that whisper egg commands, holding in their foreign mouths my forming day. I like eggs soft boiled, 2 minutes maybe, I don't count, to scoop with a spoon hot from the shell like a little white and yellow thrill. Guys who aren't with eggs, I'm not with them. So that's Egg Breakfast. And speaking of friendship, in this book that I'm reading from, I found as I was looking for it, a letter that Carol Weston wrote to my mother. Just incredible. Carol is incredible. So the friendships that continued throughout the marathon are really important. For me also, the changes in my life from being a young poet and hanging around with my young poet friends to being a young mother, and then to being a mother of children who weren't as eager to be brought to the poetry marathon, and finally last year to children who agreed to participate through much pleading. So it's been something to watch my children evolve through the poetry marathon. There is somewhere on Facebook a photograph of my child, Ash, then Abigail, who is sitting next to Derek Fenner's portrait of Sarah Palin with a rifle, and Ash looks like they have zero fucks to give. And if I can find that picture, I'll share it with the Poetry Marathon, because that is an incredible memory for me of the kids and their interactions with the Poetry Marathon. the one thing that always got them to come in and do it was seeing Carol and knowing that Carol was going to be there reading and wanted to hear them. That's what for the past several years made my children write poems and read poems at the marathon. Another really important part of the marathon for me is the deadline. I'll get back to that because I meant to go about long projects and about I have had several big projects that have spent their time coming into fruition through the poetry marathon. One of them is Ironstone Whirligig, which was started with as a blog with many of the friends who are here in the big blog breakout of the late 90s. Many of the people who are part of this, Xtina, Daniel, Dan, James included. And I handed this book to Ash about an hour ago and said, pick something for me to read. And Ash picked a couple things from 2004 because they seemed daily and didn't seem as tragic as much of it is. So I'm going to read from November 1st, 2004. Truth be told, I'm sick of cool, like heavy talk with an upspeak, like having a dream of talking like yeah. Black and white and drunk and my art and yeah and wow, of winning and losing and co-authors and blocking projects knit by other people, complaining and matter and driving around looking at signs. Welcome home sailors and Marines and soldiers and no more bush and lordy lordy. I have to admit I don't understand my boiler, how to keep the water in the glass tube right and which way to turn the vents. Can't afford to have the guy come show me and I don't have the guts to admit it anyway. May go to the heating supply store near the State Fish Pier and ask with babe on my hip. It's cheaper that way. I need a new vent anyway. What is this crap movie? Animated people talking about dreams? Crap. Referring to Lorca, of course. I'm also sick of weird. If there are beautiful women at a party and I don't feel beautiful, I am not one of them. I do not feel beautiful. I feel more like a machine. There is a list of things that need to be done and I will turn myself on and do them. I will turn myself off and rest. Repeat. No, that's not true. I wish I felt like a machine. There is a list of things I need to do, but because I feel like about too many things, I can't seem to get any of them done. I wish I were watching Monday Night Football with Jim Dunn. Resist, but will. Tomorrow might bring me to Portsmouth for Carrie, but the baby's in charge and I have no definite plans. Monkey shoes are in Portsmouth. Monkey shoes are boiler. Heat or food or fashion. I need to say this before I forget. Fuck Kurt Schilling. I still stand by that last line. So the final thing I wanted to talk about was deadlines and about how knowing the marathon was coming got me to write. And so this is the last poem I wrote on the letter to Maximus, which is my response to Charles Olson's Maximus poems. So this is the last one I've written and I have to write 30 pages in the next moment. So the next month or so. So I'm going to read the last bit I've written in hopes that it gets me going. So sassafras. We are still using it up, taking what we can, what we will, the people in power, their houses on hills. Those are still the names we know. And it's beautiful driving. Even that little stretch of highway is a treat for the eyes. At high tide, the water in the marsh is so high you can see just the tops of the marsh grass. 2, fish. It's not like that anymore. The silver isn't in the fish, but the land, the idea. The silver is Gloucester, so beautiful, so close to the city, so nice to live here. The names we know, the people who pay the lawyers, they make sure the others, I won't use your words here, don't get too close. Not in my backyard, they say, without saying. Character, tradition, history. I think of your scream to the editor. I'll fight for the living. Thank you so much for having me tonight. And I'm looking forward to the rest of it. Yay.
Thank you. Oh my God, that was beautiful. Thank you, Amanda Cook. Please mute yourself. And next up is James Cook. James, please unmute yourself. Beautiful. And I think that Carol Weston got into the room finally. Thank you, Chad, for helping out, and welcome, Carol.
Well, thank you, everybody. This is I love the ways we're figuring out to make things keep happening. It's a constant theme of my daily life. Spent the 12 hours today figuring out what school's going to look like in the fall, and this so happy to be able to turn on another part of my brain that often is neglected. But I haven't cared so much about poetry since I was about 16, 17 years old and needed it desperately in that first phase of life. So it's so great to hear you all read today. So I just wanted to, I'm going to weave in, say something about the marathon and then read and go back and forth a little bit. I remember the first Boston Poetry Marathon. I didn't go to it. Amanda didn't go to it. We knew about it, but I was working. At that time, I was working a lot of hours in really bad jobs to pay for rent here in Gloucester. And I remember Garrett came in the next day and started talking about, do you know this band, Galaxy 500? I just hung out with these poets who are, the rhythm section from the band or whatever. He's talking about, Damon and Naomi. And I remember hearing about this and desperately wishing I had been there the day before as a young person. And he talked about all the great poets there and so on. And it really, I was there year 2. We've missed a couple since, but not very many. But I remember the first year and getting a great, very detailed report from Garrett at the coffee shop I worked in the day afterwards. I'm going to jump into a poem now that echoes something that Amanda read earlier. It also has Sean Cole in it, well, as part of the dedication. So this is called Compost Ghost with Eggs. For and after Garrett, Sean, Amanda, Ash, and Sam. Alex pondered as Sam posited a gender-fluid god under the noonday clouds of Zagreb. Billy camped a damp and ragged fortnight with Randy in Quebec. Cam came too soon to see the milky stars on the road to Weed. Daryl fiddled with the squirrely fox from Port-au-Prince to Baton Rouge. Eddie engendered an uprising around the well-fortified base of Dusseldorf. Frankie forgot theirself in Langfrang. Greg, sailor in port, exposed theirself to the private origins of the specious pseudoscience in Christchurch. Henry followed the beautiful androgyne on tour in Corpus Christi. Ivy, in league with the bushes, bent over backwards to capitalize on Sanandaj. Jamie wouldn't accept the premise of the joke, whether in Bangkok or Cork. Kelly hated the question, even as they slyly consented to a pungent dinner in a dive in Liverpool. Lou dreamt of rancid mistakes between Rotterdam and Bochum. Morgan was sick in bed at conception. Nico with Loba and Lubo passed from drone to hymn, aria to lullaby, and susurration to howl on the road from Virginia to Orlando. Orion strung their bow and bowed to the great future without casting a glance behind their right shoulder toward Antwerp and Antum. Pat questioned orthodoxy in B'nai Brak. Quinn had the constitution to spill ink and survive to tell of it in San Salvador. Raven, wood stacked high, holed up deep in Pelotas before a respite in Annapolis and Chagrin Falls. Tony, downtrodden and troubled, plagued with locust words and anvils, mediated on the insect wings before them and grew to love the lurid sights along the falls of Faux Duguazo. Urchin joined Tony along the riverbed before the plunge of Devil's Throat whilst dreaming of naked winters on the Dnieper in Kiev. Viv died, their ashes dissolved in the Clyde within Glasgow. Wit didn't have any and doubled over with ennui in Bordeaux. Zan raised a ruckus as if it were their own child, and then filled the empty nest with worms in Crawley and births in Albany. Youth is a hustler, omnipresent at La Cruz. Zev made it to the end, arm in arm with them in a queer, cloudless rain, mainly on the plains of the improbable but true South, in the fecund and febrile imagination beyond Resistencia. So that has a lot of the spirit of a game that Sean Cole brought to a night at Garrett Lansing's place. And that poem is a variation on the game Third of a Ghost that we played one night from Garrett's childhood for all the people dedicated to the poem, who are dedicated at the beginning. Sunday, as Amanda said, was a gathering time for so lots of people, a lot of us from the North Shore heading down, Jim Dunn, David Rich, Patrick Dowd, the Cooks, folks from Garrett, all heading down to Cambridge or Boston, wherever we were having the marathon that year, and then re-meeting, seeing so many people like, Christina and Sean Cole and Mark Lamoureux and Jim Burley, Chris Rizzo, Michael Peters, and all of you here today, and seeing folks was such a great part of that Sunday experience. So we're transporting that a little bit to Friday today. I have one more poem to read here. And this is a poem in response to my kid, Ash. Ash, memes are meiotic in Garrett's sense, or sorry, we are close. For and after China Mieville's Embassy Town. Starts with a quote from Embassy Town. Spanish dancer and its friends practiced lying, and I tried to help them find new ways to speak me. I get the idiomatic charge, believe me. Lines quiver curl and tilt a verisimilitude like an attitude, stance of a body and set of eye, nose, mouth, signifying in a community with enforced orthodoxy broadcast and accumulating idiolect back channel. I want to make sentences, but I can only manage paragraphs. Truly, I don't know what I'm talking about. After a storm, we find the trees toppled. The root system describes a milliskelion mandala. Agape, we ponder ramifications of arms and hairs holding rocks defiant. Our question, how to read in light of ourselves. Does it ever occur to you that this language is impossible, Avis? Your light feeding a solar system, breaking rainbows through a prison like a prism. I want to convince you that poems like diadems, DNA, and fan fiction mark resplendent politics like patterns. Well, they can. You're a poem of a Sunday, feet on earth where the sun goes down, or seems to. We're bound to notice. I'm not yet sure how to fill my poems with CRISPR fixes and bio-rigged tech that extends our powers both late and soon. What are our words worth anyway? Axiomatic of a fall just because it's not possible to have been born in the future, even if we're born into a future. I love you and wish I could promise it'll be all right, but we both know better. Let's dance a figure. What do we even meme? We put together blocks of word ideas and provide a human key, even at the end of a long, wormless year. The title is wrong. Sorry, we are close. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much, James Cook. Next up, Jim Burley was scheduled for this set. He was having some technical trouble and wasn't able to log in. We're going to schedule him for later in this evening, so stay tuned for Jim Burley a little later this evening. Next up is Carol Weston and Chad. Can you hear me? Chad? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes, and Carol can hear you too. You can talk to
Beautiful.
her directly.
I'm ecstatic.
Hi.
Carol, hello. You are up. I'm going to mute myself right now. Welcome. I'm so glad that you could make it. And thank you, Chad, for helping her. I'm going to mute myself.
Well, greetings to all whom I cannot see. My scream, I used to scream at the age of 16 and always am afraid it will return. My scream, like a snake in the back of my throat, waits for my heartbeat to burst the amniotic sac of my soul. The door. Get away from me. Do not protect me from the dark, half-opened door, behind which lies my mystery, that land I walk to, terrified, and where I make my home. And recently I've had lots of falls and rises with the wind. Well, anyway, it's strange to live inside an aging mortal's skin. I am arthritic. Come over here and listen to my bones. This pile of exultant consciousness has turned to poison on the floor. I have nowhere to step. I gnaw on wood and spit. When winter comes, I bite the ice. Young bomber of the marathon, a shamanic vision. You went up to the sun and out the other side, then into the sperm whale's jaw and stomach, and out of his mouth. High in the sky, I asked you, who are your friends? You replied, the microscopic creatures in the clouds. Cotillion. The cotillion was a problem. I who bit the poison ivy in the woods and in the marble halls at school let out my scream of my forbidden body, lay on my bed of diaries and books, unaware of the evening dress on the closet door. My mother broke into the quiet of my room. It's time to try on the dress, she said. I rose and screamed and fell on the little lavender rug beside the bed. She came down on her knees beside me on the rug and cried. I, the screamer, walk in on my gentle father's arms. His eyes flit over the sensual back of Sally, the girl in front. I, a brow sick with thinking, my body sloped with doubt, walk in among the princesses. Why am I being pulled out of my sacred darkness into this glare and the united heartbeat of this band, terrified to touch and be touched? John and I often were walking through the mountains, coming back down in the dark. The walking stick to John. At home, at one, in woods we wander, the walking stick guiding us between branches, along paths, along ridges of minds. We lie through scared nights, our breaths drawn up into starlight. We mount mountains, we look down, collecting. We look up by sunlight, by snow light, by snow spectrum. Our feet can find by dark the feel of paths by night, the crease of land, our hand in hand. Rope. Rope, you did not understand why my friend Joan wound you so tightly around her neck, nor why she jumped. The ass that turns the world, to George Barker, British poet, born 1913. My master walks ahead of me. I see into his soul. My master knocks my building down. I have no place to hide. All human speech inhabits him, all poetry and myth. He is the monster of my mind. He is the fire of humankind. He is the voice that smashes glass. He is the ass that turns the world. I look at my watch, my darling time. You are eating me alive, and I love it. Burning lake. The burning lake is where we must swim to transform our hidden language into living fire. Thank you, all of you who I cannot see. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you,
Oh,
Carol.
bravo,
Bravo, bravo. I just,
bravo, bravo.
Carol is transcendent. And I've said many times that she's the closest thing we have to a Delphic priestess. It would not be the marathon without Carol. And I'm just so, so glad that that she was able to be here with us tonight via the phone. Thank you again, Chad, for doing all of the arranging, making this possible. We couldn't have done it without you. And thank you, Carol, for your wonderful reading. So I'm going to scoot really quickly now. So I want to thank Ruth Lepson, Daniel Bouchard, Amanda Cook, James Cook, and Carol Weston for their wonderful readings. We're going to take a 10-minute break. And next up is Leanne Brown, Tony Torn, Jim Dunn, Joanna Furman, Tom Daly, and David Kirschenbaum. 10-minute break, and then we will reconvene. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again. Bravo.
Thank you.
All right.
Great, everybody. Thank you.
God, thank you. This is great. All right. And Christina, are
Thank you
there?
all. Yep,
Yep.
I just stopped the recording. Perfect.
Okay, so you stopped the streaming?
Yes.
Okay, hold on.
Oh, wait a minute.
I think we're still streaming.
Let's stop this right